Hey artist friends, can you believe it is September 1st already? Where has this year gone? I can't believe I am opening the ephemera packet from Laura for our September 2021 mixed media menagerie. Our first ever one was September of 2020. So it's crazy to think that we've now been doing this little challenge for over a year. So this month, Nina also gave us some washi tape. She released some beautiful new washi tape. There you can see her website. I'll also link all of the supplies, the ephemera information, the washi tape information below. So I started also by grabbing out my journal. I brewed some tea because one of our little requirements was using a tea bag. Grabbed my green paints and my little texture tools and my molding paste to get started. So of course I began my spread the typical Nicole way of adding some ephemera to the background, and oops, I made a little bit of mess here with my matte medium. Cleaned it up, added a very generous amount to the front and the back of these papers that Laura included in the ephemera drop because I had a lot to use up there. I'm just going to spread these throughout the page to create my first layer of interest and begin to kind of get my brain going on ideas of how I'm going to create this month. So after I have those book pages down and dry, I'm also going to add this little strip of printed paper that she included. I'm going to spread it out 5 or so different places on this page. It's going to act as my first kind of interesting mark making element, and again, still trying to figure out here what I am going to do for our theme. So I also grabbed this printed paper. I believe it's from Dina Wakley's Collage Collective, if that's what it's called. Don't remember what it's called, but it's by Dina Wakley, and tore up the little pieces that I thought would go with the green theme and kind of where I was leaning here on what I was going to create. Next, I wanted to add some of that washi tape from Nina. It's going to get covered up quite a bit, but I thought that maybe if I included a bit here in the background, that little peaks of it would show through, and it would be one way that I could use her washi tape. And you'll see I also feature it quite a bit at the end of some of my finishing touches, but here I'm just hoping that it's going to add just a little bit of color as I continue to add my layers of mark making and other things as I figure them out. So now I'm going to try to kind of make this cohesive. Typically what I like to do is use some gesso to kind of pull the elements together. It kind of helps embed them to the page. In this case, I'm wanting to add quite a bit of the gesso because I don't like how yellow these pages are. They're more of like, I don't know, a parchment-y yellow brown color. And I'm hoping not to have too much of that brown in my actual page, so I'm wanting to cover up. And also I used this as a great opportunity to use those texture tools. I'm using it in the gesso to add some interest, because when I add the paint layers next, it's going to add a variation in the paint by the fun texture marks that I'm creating in the gesso. So now I'm going to pick up my first color here of my first layer, and here's where I make my first mistake. I make several throughout these journal pages, but I did not let that gesso dry. So my turquoise is turning into a more of a pastel turquoise that I did not want it to turn into. And in my head, I am trying to figure out how I'm going to fix this as I work on the page. Alright, so we're going to go with it here. I dried it a little bit, adding a little bit more of the turquoise watery, and then I'm going to get a baby wipe and wipe it away and just try to figure out how to fix this kind of mistake I made. But there are no mistakes in art, right? We just kind of go with it and figure out what to do next. I think most of my journal pages end up being solving problems that I create for myself. So here I am solving a problem. I'm going to add a little bit more gesso to push that turquoise color to the background and fling it on the page and hope for the best. So adding more gesso gave me another opportunity to pull out a different texture tool to add some more sketchy lines and mark making into that next gesso layer. Next I grabbed this phthalo green, trying to push the turquoise back. It is not the green I was hoping for, but again, I'm just going to go with it. I decided to not worry this time as I created and just let the problems fix themselves. I kind of had an idea here in my head of what I wanted to do, but I'd already messed it up. So I'm solving problems that I'm creating, trying to go with the themes, and just really not putting pressure on myself and having fun. So my next layer of this phthalo green wasn't turning out as I wanted, so I'm wiping it away and we'll figure out what to do next. So I've added water and dried the green, and it's not as bad as I thought. So I continue with that green and start adding some mark making, just some blobs here, a few different places on the page. Again, adding some interest and moving the eye around the page. I'm kind of making them blobby so that they match that black and white printed paper in the background. And one of my favorite ways to enhance circles and blobs is to also scribble around them with the Stabilo L pencil. This is the graphite version. Sometimes I also use the black, but in this instance, I am only going to use the the graphite version to add some scribbles around those blobs. Now I'm going to make what I like to call a Stabilo puddle. I don't know if there is a more professional term for this, but I call it a Stabilo puddle. I scribbled some of the black Stabilo on some patty paper there to make a puddle of it. It's kind of like watercolor, but it's a lot chalkier than watercolor, and I'm using it to grunge up my background, hoping to darken that turquoise and the phthalo green and kind of bring some grunginess to my pages. Next, I grabbed that graphite pencil to do some scribbles and some writing and some squiggles to just add some more interest to the background. And I'm going to add just a little bit more shadowing here with that Stabilo puddle. So as you saw in the beginning, I actually brewed 4 different colors of tea. I started only with that red, and then I opened my package from Laura and saw that she included the cheesecloth. So I ran back downstairs, brewed 3 other teas with colors, a matcha for green, a pumpkin that I was hoping to be orange, and a turmeric that I was hoping to be yellow. My husband helped me with the colors because he's the tea lover and I'm not. But I cut up 4 different pieces of that cheesecloth, and I'm trying to dye it. I'm not sure which color I'm going to end up using, but this is going to give me some choices. Next, I grabbed the craft tag that Laura included. I knew that I wanted to create on this tag, and it's porous, so anything I create on it is going to soak in, and I'm not going to be able to wipe it off as I create. And you know how well my background's been going, I thought that I needed to make sure to protect this tag. So I put some clear gesso on it. I'm going to let it dry so that it's ready for me to create. Next, I grabbed my Stabilo pencil again in the black, And I'm going to start to draw my focal point. I knew I wanted to draw an outline of a tree on my page, but I didn't at the beginning know how I was going to really get there. I didn't want it to be a traditional tree with green leaves, which is why I was kind of going with the green background here. Normally when I draw on my pages, I start with like a charcoal pencil first to kind of get the idea, but I decided to just go for it. The stabilo is pretty forgiving and the tree shape is pretty forgiving. It's not as precise as like a flower or something else that I'm going to draw. So I just grabbed the stabilo. I'm going to sketch in the tree. I'm not going to 100% worry about how it looks because I know that as I work on it and I activate the stabilo, I can continue to mold and shape the tree into how I want it to look. So this is going to be a little bit of a back and forth process. I believe Donna Downey first called it the dance, and I'm going to be dancing back and forth here between my stabilo pencil, normal, and then with my paintbrush and water activating it to try to get the shape of the tree I want. So once I activated it, now I'm grabbing the stabilo pencil again to outline those branches, add some definition and lines, and make it look more like a tree. So just a couple little Nicole tips on trees. If your branches look funny, remember that branches are usually thicker and then they go thin. So if they start looking kind of wonky and weird, look at the shape and make sure it's thicker towards the trunk and thinner towards the top. And also remember that tree branches aren't necessarily straight. Some of my branches here are looking a little straight. So as you'll see as I go on, I'm going to define those branches even more so they don't look so funny and straight. My next step is to grab this sepia ink. I love the sepia indie ink. It's probably one of my favorite art supplies. I don't use a lot of coffee dye that people use. I use this instead. It really has some of the same properties as brewed coffee. And so I'm using it to add another dimension to my tree, just adding a little hint of brown in between my activated stabilo in my branches. So I've set my tree aside to let it rest a minute, and I'm going to start working on this tag. I'm going to add some of that sepia ink to it first, some of that paper, and play with it here a little bit to get a good background layer going, because I know that I'm going to use the modeling paste or molding paste. It's called Molding with some brands and Modeling with some brands. It's the exact same product. I'm going to use that next on top of the tag, so I'm wanting to get a good background layer behind the image that I'm going to use with the modeling paste or molding paste, whichever you want to call it. Alright, so my tag is now prepped, and I'm going to use this stencil from iStencils. I'll have it linked below if you're interested in it. It has a really nice saying on it, but I'm just grabbing a few of the lines that I thought really went with nature and the tree and kind of what I was hoping my page was going to say. So I'm lining it up on my tag, grabbing my golden molding paste. I've got the light version here because it dries a little faster. It's a little bit fluffier, but any molding, modeling, any kind of paste you want, you're going to spread it kind of like frosting through the stencil. And I'm being careful here because I am not wanting all of the words to come through. I'm just wanting part of it. So I'm spreading it as carefully as I can to not get those twos on there on my tag. And once it's spread out and the thickness that I want, I'm going to lift that stencil and voila, there it is. So after I added those words to the tag, I wanted to add some words to the background as well. As you can see, this is one of my absolute favorite stencils. It is full of black spray paint because I use it a lot. I'm just going to spray it on my page with black spray paint. This is a Liquitex spray paint that works really well indoors. It's actually kind of slow to dry and water soluble, so you can wipe it off really quickly if you mess up, and I do wipe it off in a couple places. And as you can see, I'm also flipping it over and cleaning it in between sprays. I'm trying to be really careful here. There I am wiping it off. I'm careful here because I'm doing it straight on the page and I didn't want to make a huge mess. So several times throughout this process, I'm going to continue to define this tree as I lose it from other layers or as I notice some funny areas of the branches. So that's what I'm doing here. I grabbed that Stabilo to fix those ends of the branches and activate it just to make it look a little less funny. Now I'm grabbing this yellow green paint. It's a golden so-flat paint. I've been using the golden so-flats throughout this journal page. They are my new favorite paints. I love how they're not glossy, they're flat. It's Golden's first flat paint, and I'm really enjoying using them lately. And I'm just going to use it to add some highlights to my tree. I don't know if this is the same in all places, but down here in Texas, our trees have a lot of like moss and lichens and green things from our green things from the humidity growing on them. And so I'm just kind of adding some of that to the tree, also adding some highlights to it to kind of make it pop a little bit more from my page. I'm going to grab this green paint as well and add it a few places on the page to kind of add some highlighting around the edges. Here I am doing that. Yep, there we go. And once I'm done adding some of that green, you'll see how it's really kind of allowing those areas to pop a little bit more, just like it helped that tree to pop. I'm going to also use it to make some marks, I think, coming up in just a minute. You'll see some mark making with that paint as well. Yep, there we go. I'm adding some plus signs with that green paint a couple of places on the page, and continuing to just layer the marks and the interest to my background. Alright, so it's actually the next day here. I had pulled the cheesecloth out of the tea and the tea bags out to let them dry on this towel overnight, and you can see how the tea dyed that cheesecloth pretty well, and I'm going to set that aside and continue to work. So that molding paste or modeling paste, whichever you're using, is usually also pretty porous, so it's going to soak in whatever you put on top of it. And I wanted mine to stay white. I like how it popped, and I like how it also pulled the background up, so I added some clear gesso on top to protect it, so that if I get any paint on top of it, it's going to be a lot easier to wipe off with a baby wipe, and it won't stain those letters. So here I am again defining my tree with the Stabilo pencil. Here's why I'm adding some more, for lack of a better word, bumps to the tree branches so they don't look as straight. Adding a little bit more interest to the trunk, adding the interest to the actual branches to make it look a little bit more tree-like and less I don't know, flat? I don't know what else to call it, but you can see I'm adding some dimension, and then I'm going to activate just a little bit of it, but I also want to keep some of the sketchy lines as well. And to enhance those sketchy lines and tie in that graphite pencil that I've used in other places, I'm just scribbling that on the tree, just really loosely to add some more interest and sketchy branches to the tree. So I really like my background. I'm really liking it monochromatic, but the quote on my tag talks about the colors of life, and I'm thinking, monochromatic really isn't necessarily the colors of life, and so I wanted to add a little bit more mark making colors to my background to tie in that quote to what I'm doing. This is also a really good opportunity for me to use those texture tools again to make the marks, and I decided to pull out the fluorescent pink and magenta and also the fluorescent violet, because since red is the complementary to green, I thought that these would blend in better and not totally stand out, but also be a really good complement to the green background. So I'm making some marks here with that fluorescent pink, and then I'm going to also make some marks with the fluorescent magenta, and I'll just let you enjoy that process. So I didn't love the fluorescent magenta lines as well. I kind of liked them, but didn't love them. So I'm using some water here to kind of feather them out, make them not look so prominent as lines, but still keep that color in the background. I'm going to wipe some of it away with the baby wipe as well, and just kind of play with the background. So now I'm grabbing the black So Flat paint. I used to use a lot of black gesso for this purpose, but this So Flat paint actually works a lot better, and I am loving it just as much as using black gesso. In this instance, I'm going to use it to make those letters pop a little bit from the tag, and again, this is why I added that white gesso, because if I get the black on these letters, I can take a baby wipe before it dries and wipe it away so that it does not stain the letters. I'm just using the black to help the letters pop away. Now I'm grabbing a tea bag. I had dumped out the tea in my trash can, and I'm cutting it apart because one item that we needed to use was a tea bag, and I was going to justify it by using the tea bags to dye the cheesecloth, but it ended up, this one tea bag turned into a really cool yellow color that looks kind of like the green yellow that I've been using on the background. So I used that as a little enhancement in the tag hole there, and I'm going to start layering my focal point. I'm putting the tag on some of the book text, and then this cool paper that Laura included that had holes in. I thought it would add a really neat element under the tag, and I'm just going to figure out what to do next as I'm playing. I only wanted part of that tea bag to show. I didn't want it to look too frilly, but it's leaving too big of a knot behind it. So then I'm going to grab a stapler and staple it on, and that works a lot better than tying it. The staples is going to add another fun element. I'm going to staple that there on the tag by the tea bag, and then also on the bottom right corner. So I decided here on the pink cheesecloth, I'm thinking the pink element is going to tie in with the mark making and also the colors of Nina's washi tape. Her washi tape has the beautiful greens and pinks and purples, and using the pink cheesecloth with the pink and purple mark making is going to tie it all together. So I'm using matte medium to stick that cheesecloth to the back of the tag, and if you notice, it turned a funny color. So I'm going to have to play with that in the future. For some reason, that tea changed color when I added the matte medium. Side note there, something to play with in the future to figure out why that happened. But now I'm adding it to my page with some of that Dina Wakley medium heavy gel, sticking it down. And now I'm going to work on enhancing it a little bit. I knew I wanted to use this really cool, it's like a fabric washi tape with ledger paper printed on it from Laura, and then Nina's washi tape. And it takes me a little bit to figure out what to do and how to layer it, but eventually I get it to a spot that I really like. So it took a little bit, it was a process, but I got there, and now I'm picking up these little arrows that Laura included. They're little wood cutouts, and I was going to stick them on the tree as is because I thought it brought the brown from the tag over to the left, and as I was staring at them, I thought, you know, I think I should put washi tape on those little arrows. So I used some matte medium here and Nina's beautiful washi tape to stick to the arrow. It's going to bring that washi tape, the cohesion of it together. Once I get it on the arrow, I'm just going to use a scissor and clip it off. And I'm also going to add a tiny bit of it to that top arrow as well. So doesn't that washi tape look absolutely gorgeous on those arrows? I think it's probably one of my brightest ideas to date. And now I'm going to stick those arrows down again with that Dina Wakley heavy gel because they're heavy and thick and matte medium just won't do. And once the gel is back, they'll dry pretty quickly and they'll be stuck to the page. And as those arrows dry, I'm just going to add a couple final touches to the page. I grabbed the magenta fluorescent to top it off on some of those spots to add a little bit more dimension and to tie them into the washi tape. I'm also splattering on the page and splattering it on the tag, and it looks gorgeous on Nina's washi tape. Then I'm going to grab my Bombay India ink here, one of my favorite final touches, to add a couple drops of ink to the page as well and on the tag, and call it finished. I really thank you for following us for this entire year and starting again here in September for Mixed Media Menagerie. This month, again, our theme was trees. Our color was to use greens. We needed to try to include molding paste, modeling paste, a tea bag, and using some texture tools, and then also incorporating the ephemera from Laura and the beautiful washi tape that Nina sent us. And speaking of that washi tape, you can hop over to Nina's website, which will link to her Etsy store, to purchase some. It's also going to be available on Peace Craft Love's website. Both of those are on the slide at the end of this. We are also giving away some washi tape, so hop over to Laura, Erin, or my Instagram page and find out how you can win some of Nina's washi tape. Thank you so much for following along on Mixed Media Menagerie. Thank you, Nina, for mailing us some of your beautiful washi tape, and thank you for watching. Again, don't forget to hop over to Instagram to find out how you can win some washi tape, and also we want you to share your creations. As always, use the hashtag Mixed Media Menagerie when you follow September's prompts, and we look forward to seeing what you create. Thanks again so much for watching.